Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new Fallout 4 build on FudgeMuppet. It's Michael here today, bringing you a build that has been highly requested for many weeks now, the General. This is the build for any Minutemen playthrough, and it's also great for anyone who loves building settlements. Remember to leave your comments below on what build you want to see next, and if you haven't already subscribed, then be sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any Fallout 4 builds coming soon. This build is all about rebuilding the Commonwealth and leading the Minutemen to a prosperous future alongside the friendly inhabitants of the wasteland. This character won't be using power armor, but if you want to, then you can. Maybe you'll want it at the start of the game, and it would definitely be nice to have a set of power armor with Minutemen paint on it just for the aesthetic. That aside, I'd like to let you know that this build is going to have some beast stats by level 50, as it uses less perks than most builds but has more stat allocation. This build levels fast, is sturdy, strong, and charismatic, and if that doesn't sound good to you, I don't know what would. This build is a master with rifles but also with melee weapons, allowing you to switch things up depending on your circumstance and mood. We've also gone for a very revolutionary aesthetic, as you can see. Don't forget to check the description box to access the timestamps we've made for you to help you navigate throughout this video. If you want to skip a section or go back to a place to remember information, these links are a massive help. You'll also find our social media links in there, so follow us on Snapchat if the best entertainment known to man is your kind of thing. The General grew up in the richer parts of Boston and lived as a single child with his highly conservative parents. His father was an important businessman within a financial institution and earned millions of dollars each year with his extremely high-paying job. It was the kind of occupation that came with one of those overly convoluted job titles you'd never even heard of. He always told the General to strive towards a life of wealth and power, however his son did not agree. The General was a much more selfless person and wanted to spend his life helping others who weren't as fortunate as him. He knew he should be working to make a living, but at the same time, he also believed that his father had so much money, there wasn't really any point. He wanted his father to pay for all his needs so he could use his time for more noble causes. This is generally what happened for his entire life. And while he was very different to his father in regards to his ambitions, he definitely shared his overachieving genetics. Throughout a large part of his life, the General was actually a fencing champion. It was a sport his father began to teach him, however the General eventually became far too good for him and started receiving professional lessons. His father could pay for him to be taught by the best, and it wasn't long before the General was the state champion. He really enjoyed fencing, however he ended up deciding that he wanted to spend his life doing other things. He had some pretty high-tier genetics and had always been strong, smart, and well-spoken. He was very convincing, and his parents knew that if he went into business, he'd have persuasion, brains, and respect on his side. They believed him to be naive when he went against their wishes, and throughout his high school years, he spent time traveling to less fortunate areas to help those in need. He would give money to the poor, but more often he would physically help them with their problems. One of the biggest problems people had was actually damage to their house that had occurred from extreme weather or simply because the houses were so old they were falling apart. The General taught himself some basic construction skills and used this knowledge to help repair houses until eventually his life took an unexpected turn. Well, it wasn't expected by him at least. The General had been using his father's money to pay for all his expenses, and while he was grateful for this, his parents were sick of him constantly out of the house, leeching off them to help people they didn't care about. They told the General they'd bought him a quaint house in a more moderate suburb, and he was to leave home, move here, and get a job. The General was devastated by this, to say the least. Call him spoiled, but he really just wanted to spend his days improving the lives of others. With no desire to get rich himself, the General decided he would join the military. He needed a job that would pay him well enough while allowing him to still make a difference, helping others directly and indirectly. His military career was certainly successful and made him a much more disciplined and hardy individual. Eventually, after his term with the military finished, he headed back home with a decent amount of money and ended up meeting a lady who he later married. He had told her from the start that what he mainly wanted to do was help people, and she actually agreed to be the main income provider for the family so he could spend his days being charitable. As time went by, his wife became pregnant, Sean was conceived, and the General ended up becoming a stay-at-home dad. He was happy to do this, but he truly wished he had more time for himself. Be careful what you wish for though, because it wasn't long before the bombs began to fall and the General was rushed into Vault 111 with his family. Next, we're getting into the quest choices and motives of the General. Before this, I'd like to say that we're keeping big quest and faction storylines quite vague, but I will be talking about the factions you can join. If you don't want to know what factions you can join in Fallout 4, then skip this section by using the timestamps in the description. The General will enter the Commonwealth incredibly upset by what has just happened and will immediately seek out his son. He quickly discovers that Boston is now a dangerous and harsh place, but after finding Preston Garvey and learning about the Minutemen, he is relieved that there are still good people in the world. He joins their cause without hesitation, and while he's distraught about his loss, part of him is happy that he can now dedicate his life to a cause greater than himself, greater than money and materialistic things. He can continue to help those in need like he always wanted to, and this is exactly what he will do. He will also be able to continue his hobby of construction by building up settlements, all while providing people with the necessities they need to live. He will never ask for money for what he does, and he will help those who need it most. If he is asked for help by someone he thinks doesn't really need it, then that person is put on the back burner and attended to later. On his journey to find Sean, his main goal will be rebuilding the wasteland to make it united under the leadership of the Minutemen. After becoming the General, this character will develop true leadership and definitely become more decisive and more tactical. The General will not be fond of the other factions as he doesn't trust their motives, but out of all of them, he trusts the Railroad the most. The General is going to march into the wasteland with 7 strength, 1 perception, 4 endurance, 8 charisma, 6 intelligence, 1 agility, and 1 luck. You're going to be getting the Perception Bobblehead early on, giving you access to the Rifleman perk, and when you get the special book in Sanctuary before this, you're going to be putting it into Endurance for a helpful health boost. You're also going to want to get all these special bobbleheads as soon as you're able to, and as always, we've put links in the description to the videos we made on how to get them. 7 strength represents the fact that the General's always been a strong guy, and it's going to ensure that our secondary combat solution, melee, is actually worth using. It will also give us a nice amount of carry weight, which is helpful as this character is going to be heavily into settlement building and will have to pick up junk to scrap for materials. The General has also always been fairly resilient, and he's got some nice brains too. That said, he stands out as a person mainly because of his personality and his ability to get on with and inspire others. Apart from all these admirable characteristics, the General hasn't really stood out in many other areas. So let's dive into the perks of the General, more specifically every perk from level 1 all the way up to level 50. Anything after this is up to you, and remember you can modify these builds if you want to. For example, you might want the Hacker perk to get terminals for your settlements, and also to simply access all the terminals around the Commonwealth. Our General focuses heaps on getting his special stats up and didn't get Hacker, so if you want it, you're going to have to alter some perk choices. So starting off, the General is going to get the Big Leagues perk. This is going to give him 20% more damage with his melee weapons, and we decided this was useful to pick first as we want to make sure that melee is useful throughout the entire playthrough from start to end. Next up, we get the Rifleman perk, which will of course affect the laser musket you pick up early on, and this will make you deal 20% more damage with non-automatic rifles. Now that we've built a solid foundation of early game damage, we start investing in the Inspirational perk. This will make your companions do more damage in combat, and it also makes them unable to hurt you. This is quite helpful as you'll be using Preston Garvey as the companion, which you're able to do very early on, and he obviously fits in with the entire Minutemen theme of this build. At level 5, the General gets the Medic perk, and this helps offset the fact that we don't start with super high endurance. We find that we take more damage while using melee than we do while using our guns, and being able to heal 40% of our max HP using a stim pack really helps to offset this. The first rank of Medic also makes you remove 40% of your max potential radiation by using Radaway. At level 6, we get the Science perk to start upgrading our laser musket and the energy weapons that we give to our companions, and at level 7, we get the second rank of Big Leagues. This will cause us to deal 40% more melee damage and also have a chance to disarm our opponent. The reason we've prioritized Big Leagues over Rifleman early on is because the laser musket tends to be pretty high damage already, while early game melee weapons tend to be a lot weaker. Next, we get the first rank of Gun Nut to customize our secondary rifles and the weapons of any gun-wielding companions, and then we get the second rank of Rifleman. At this rank, not only will the General deliver 40% more non-automatic rifle damage, but he'll also ignore a handy 15% of his target's armor. Next, we get the Blacksmith perk to start upgrading our early game melee weapons. However, it's going to be the upgrades from later ranks that make this perk worth it. At level 11, we're getting the Cap Collector perk to improve buying and selling prices throughout the wasteland, and then at level 12, we start investing in the intelligence stat. An intelligence boost is of course going to help us level faster, which is always handy. We're then getting the Scrapper perk to break down armor and weapons for uncommon components like screws, aluminium, and copper, and we've chosen this mainly to help with extensive settlement building. Following this, we get a crucial perk for the general, and that is Local Leader, which will allow us to establish supply lines between our workshop settlements. We then get the second rank of this, giving us the ability to build stores and workstations at workshop settlements. By now, the general has the perks to access a whole bunch of settlement-based stuff. Almost everything except for creations like advanced turrets. At level 16, we get the third rank of Big Leagues to deal 60% more melee damage and have an increased chance to disarm our opponents, and then at level 17, we get the second rank of Science to take our musket to a whole new level. At level 18, we make it do more damage with Rifleman 3, and now our rifles will do 60% more damage and ignore a solid 20% of our target's armor. Next is Gun Nut 2 to gain access to anything needing the second rank of Gun Nut, such as settlement-based equipment and of course any guns we use, and finally at level 20 we get the second rank of Blacksmith. Now the general will have access to a whole new range of melee weapon modifications, which he will use to inflict more damage in battle. Next, we're making our companions even better with the second rank of Inspirational. Keep in mind that this build will be using companions frequently as part of his playstyle, so this perk is a must. The second rank is going to make your companions resist more damage in combat, and this rank also makes them unable to be harmed by your attacks. This is really useful after we get the next rank of Big Leagues, which allows us to hit multiple enemies in one strike. Without the second rank of Inspirational, we'd often end up hitting our companions by mistake. We're then going to get the second rank of Cap Collector, and now we'll be able to make the larger quality stores at our settlements. We'll have buying and selling prices at vendors improved even further as well. At level 23, we're getting the second and final rank of Scrapper so we can start breaking down weapons and armor to salvage rare components. These include things like nuclear material, fiber optics, and circuitry. At this rank, you'll also be able to favorite components, which will become highlighted in the wasteland to help you locate them. Next is Medic 2, and at this rank, Stimpaks will restore 60% of our max health, and Radaway will remove 60% of our radiation. This is the last rank the general gets of this perk. He then gets the third rank of Gun Nut to improve his secondary rifles and the guns his companions use, and then he invests 2 more points into intelligence, making it 10 after you get the Bobblehead. With maxed intelligence, this build can now start speeding through levels to acquire more perks at a faster speed. Following this is Big Leagues 4, and this is the rank that will allow us to hit multiple targets in one swipe. This perk also makes us cause 80% more melee weapon damage, and it's very useful for taking out swarms of clustered enemies like ghouls and even raiders depending on where you are. After this, we get the final rank of Blacksmith and then the third rank of Science, and now we can do almost anything to energy weapons and everything to melee weapons. At level 31, we're getting Rifleman 4, and at this rank, non-automatic rifles will do 80% more damage, they'll ignore 25% of a target's armor, and they'll have a slight chance of crippling an enemy's limb. Personally, I find Rifleman to be a very powerful perk compared to the other damage-based perks, as not only does it add more damage and also an extra effect like crippling limbs, but it has a third bonus of penetrating armor. Very nice. Now the general is about to hit up the deadlifts and get every single rank of strong back consecutively. Together, this is going to give you 50 more points of carry weight, allow you to use action points to run while you're over encumbered, and allow you to fast travel while over encumbered. This is quite useful for all the settlement building this build is going to be doing, as you're going to want to collect as much junk as you can. Also, by this stage in the game, you will be able to build up heaps of areas as you would have gathered plenty of junk, and you've got all the settlement based perks you require. Following this, the general is going to continue to hit the weights through levels 36 and 37, gaining 2 extra points of strength. Combined with the strength bobblehead, you'll now have 10 strength, allowing the general to cause heaps of damage with his melee weapons and carry even more loot and junk to sell, scrap, and use. We'll also now have access to the Rooted perk, and we'll be doubling up with this as well over the levels of 38 and 39. With 2 ranks of Rooted, this build will cause 50% more damage and gain plus 50 damage resistance, all while standing still. If you want to know the best way to use this perk in your combat playstyle, be sure to check the Rooted video we've got linked in the description. We decided not to get the 3rd rank for this build. Finally, at level 40, we're getting the final rank of Gun Nut to make our secondary rifles and the guns of our companions as optimized as possible. Next up is the 4th rank of Science, and after getting this, we can do whatever the hell we want with weapons in Fallout 4, based on the fact that we've also maxed Gun Nut and Blacksmith. We're then going to be getting the final rank of Big Leagues, which will allow us to cause double melee damage, and at this final rank we also gain a chance to cripple our opponents, or as many people love, Grand Slam their head clean off. Following this, we're getting the final rank of Inspirational, and this simply allows your companions to carry more stuff. This will allow the General to haul even more junk and loot around the Commonwealth, making him incredibly advantaged when it comes to building settlements and making money. Also, I will say that while the General isn't the most money-hungry character, he does understand that money allows him to help others and will pursue it while he's in the Wasteland. At levels 44 and 45, we get a point of Endurance, giving us even more health, and then at level 46, we get the 5th and final rank of the Rifleman perk. Now, attacks with our non-automatic rifles will do double damage and will have a slightly higher chance of crippling an enemy's limb, and will ignore a massive 30% of our target's armor. Following this incredible perk rank, we're getting 2 more points of Endurance over levels 46 and 47, giving us a total of 10 Endurance, including the Bobblehead. This will make the General very tough and represents how hardy he has become through his endeavors in the Wasteland. Combined with our other stat investments, we'll now be a master of Strength, Endurance, and Intelligence. This list gets bigger at level 49 when we get another point of Charisma, again making this stat 10 if you've got the Bobblehead. This will allow us to become more convincing than ever before and make heaps of money during our adventures. Finally, at level 50, the Minuteman General is going to get the last rank of Cap Collector, allowing him to invest 500 caps into stores to permanently increase the amount of caps they have on hand. This will allow you to sell your loot a lot faster and is a great investment for making money over the long term. Remember as well that many of these perks, for example Medic and Gun Nut, do allow the General to make improvements to his settlements, making this build not only a master in many stats and in combat, but also at building a wasteland to be proud of. Looking at the endgame special stats for the General, he's going to have 10 Strength, 2 Perception, 10 Endurance, 10 Charisma, 10 Intelligence, 2 Agility, and 2 Luck. This, of course, does include bobbleheads, but not the gear. With the gear, we're going to have 12 Charisma, which is very helpful in getting more money and being more persuasive. Now that you know how to make the General from scratch, let's go over his gear. Gear will be explained in 3 sections, one for early game, one for mid game, and one for end game. Remember that this refers to what level you are, not where you are in the main storyline. So starting off, you're going to want to get yourself a Minuteman outfit and a Minuteman hat. Both these items are quite common, and the Minuteman outfit will give you a bonus of 1 point to your agility and perception. You can use the Militia hat instead of the Minuteman hat if you don't mind the aesthetic and you'd like a bonus point of charisma. You can also collect whatever armor you'd like and wear it over the Minuteman outfit for extra protection. Leather armor would fit just fine. In terms of weapons, you're going to be getting a laser musket straight away, which you can customize however you'd like to start with, but to help you with conserving ammo and shooting faster, you're also going to want to pick up some pipe rifles. These fit in with the aesthetic of the build, and you'll want to customize these too, preferably to cause more damage. Something else you'll be keeping is the flare gun given to you by Preston Garvey, and you'll be able to use this to call the Minutemen to help you in the Commonwealth. This makes playing the General a lot more fun as you feel like you have a squad wherever you go. You'll also want to use any long-range melee weapons you can get your hands on, and you'll use this until you get Shemdrown's sword. Remember, if you find a strong melee weapon that you just really want to use, then go for it. It doesn't have to be long. When it comes to mid-game gear, you're going to be getting the Minutemen General's uniform and hat found within the castle, and these will both give you 1 plus charisma, giving you a total of +2. Combined with your stats, this is going to give you an endgame charisma of 12. Not only does this uniform look absolutely dashing, make you more persuasive and receive more caps, but it also has pretty good resistances. 45 damage resistance and 80 energy resistance to be exact. The uniform and hat are going to be the General's apparel choice for the rest of your playthrough. When it comes to weapons, be sure to keep upgrading your laser musket and your pipe rifles, and if you've got a combat rifle, you can switch out your pipe rifle for one of those and start upgrading that. By now, you'll also be able to get Shemdrown's sword, and this will be the main melee choice of this build. It will do a decent amount of damage and definitely fits in with the revolutionary appearance of this build. This sword is legendary and causes radiation damage, and after you upgrade it completely, it will cause energy damage, normal damage, and the radiation damage, making it a very versatile weapon choice. You're also going to want to set up as much artillery as possible and use artillery smoke grenades in your playstyle to barrage the living hell out of evil Commonwealth monstrosities. In regards to endgame gear, you're going to want to start looking for legendary weapons, and if you haven't seen our guide on how to farm them, be sure to check the description. The guide we made on getting Shemdrown's sword is there as well. So basically try to get a legendary combat rifle of your choice and fully upgrade it, and if you have the time, do the same thing for your laser musket. Remember, getting legendary gear isn't necessary, but if you can get it, it does make your playthrough a lot more fun. You're going to want to build yourself a 6-crank laser musket, allowing you to store the damage of 6 shots in one big long-range blast. This is very effective for taking out really tough enemies like behemoths. Keep in mind that we want our laser musket to be our long-range weapon, so upgrade accordingly. Remember, if you're under pressure and you can't crank fast enough, switch out to your trusty combat rifle. Don't forget as well that you do have 10 strength and a sword, so be sure to make good use of that for enemies that get too close or for times when you're feeling extra bold. Melee is a secondary combat skill of the general, but if you want to treat it like a primary skill, you definitely can. It's up to you to decide what your general is going to prefer using most of the time. Just make sure you use bullets and blades. In terms of a companion, obviously Preston Garvey is the main choice who fits in with the entire concept of this build, but if you struggle to put up with him, then there are definitely other options. Basically, any of the kinder and more generous companions are a good choice. So Piper and Valentine work pretty well, and even Hancock can fit in too if that's your thing. Remember, if you're using a companion like Piper who doesn't look like they fit in with the Minutemen, you can customize what they wear. When it comes to settlements, the general will of course be building up as many as he can. He's going to aim to have high happiness and defense ratings across the entire Commonwealth. He wants to build an interconnected economy throughout Boston and of course have enough water and food for everyone. Remember, you share food and water by creating trade routes between your settlements, and therefore you can dedicate different settlements to different activities. Some could be located on the water and are used for water purification, while others could be more suited to farming. You will also want to strategically set up artillery at various settlements around the wasteland so you can call in some heavy firepower for when you need it most. And that wraps up another awesome Fallout 4 build, the Minutemen General. Thank you so much for watching, and if you love these videos, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single one. Like this video and share it around if you're feeling as generous as the General, and because we're feeling generous, we've put our Snapchat usernames in the description so we can deliver you the best entertainment in the world. My name is Michael, this was the General, and I'll see you very soon with some more Fallout 4.